Freedom is the freedom to say 2 + 2 make 4. If that is granted, all else follows. So wrote novelist George Orwell. In the late 1980s, I traveled to the former Soviet Union as part of a youth soccer program. Now, decades have passed since that trip, of course, but the memories to me are still vivid. The shelves were barren. Citizens drank from communal water fountains. The items most in demand and hardest to find were American items: blue jeans, Levi-Strauss, and bubble gum. Of course, those weren't the only things common in Indiana that were contraband behind the Iron Curtain. For decades, news, literature, art, or entertainment that was not broadcast or approved by the state was scarce and available only by bootleg. The monuments towering over Russia were built to honor those who controlled it. The same men who regularly erased parts of Russia's history to suit their own political purposes, not to serve others. This was a society where ideas and dialogue existed only underground, where watching American movies was a jailable offense, where free thinkers weren't found in newspapers or airwaves, but locked away in labor camps, where information protected the state instead of empowering individuals, where history was constantly purged and revised. By the time I visited, though, Soviet leadership in self-preservation mode had gradually allowed citizens access to information and media as new technologies emerged. It was only a ray of sunlight through a very small crack, but through it, people all across the former Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc could finally see and hear what had long been hidden from them. Jazz, rock and roll, Star Wars, Chuck Norris, Dr. Zhivago, Robinson Crusoe. History once erased was restored. The truth of Stalin's murders was revealed. Inevitably, the fatal conceit of a centrally planned communist economy was exposed, and large numbers of Russians realized just how poorly their quality of life compared to the free Western alternative. They were even permitted rights to express dissatisfaction with their circumstances. Now, a totalitarian regime's greatest ally is darkness and silence. Keeping a people in the dark is the surest way to guarantee they never demand their God-given rights. Because just a trickle of information, just a hint of truth, a small offering of differing perspectives, and a touch of freedom of expression helped lead to the Soviet Union's demise. The freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4. Free people become and stay free through open dialogue because of the free exchange of information and ideas, even ones we disagree with, because of patience with perspectives that are not our own, because we study our history, celebrate its highs, and learn from its lows. That is why it was painful to read recently that over 60% of Americans are now scared to admit their beliefs or air their opinions for fear of offending others and the consequences that will come with it. Painful to learn, but easy to understand. This is the logical reaction when Americans are regularly canceled, as we say today, for things said or written decades ago, with no chance of grace or allowance for growth. And it's not just people who are being canceled. It's words. It's music. Classrooms and libraries are banning Huckleberry Finn and To Kill a Mockingbird, rather than encouraging students to examine or understand the author's words and messages. Hamilton is falling from grace now for the sin of acknowledging America was created in 1776. Whole parts of our American story are being wiped away. Now, communities have a right to lawfully determine who and what adorns their squares and streets. But that's a world away from toppling statues of George Washington and U.S. Grant. In the same manner, those of Lenin and Stalin were once removed at the end of the Cold War. And our entertainment industry is getting in on the act too. American movies once inspired freedom seekers. Today, they're self-censored to appease another authoritarian regime in Beijing. America is a good nation. Those who call it home are decent and kind. We're not perfect, but our imperfections are not irredeemable. 2020 has made it clear, though, that much work remains in the task of building a more perfect union. And that effort's ongoing. Every generation since our founding has worked towards it. And every generation has made hard-earned progress. In our own work, to create a more just future will be no less difficult, certainly more so than knocking down bronze and marble men, or waging war on books, or on each other across social media. Every time our nation has moved closer to better realizing the promise at the heart of our Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. It's been because the founders dared to dream that was possible and left us the means to do so. The freedom to raise our voices and state our opinions, to disagree and respectfully debate. The gift of free inquiry. The right to challenge our country on towards what Martin Luther King Jr. memorably called its noble dream. Through words, music, art, or expression. All free from censorship and recrimination. These liberties, unparalleled in human history, were won, preserved, and handed down to us by many of those whose memorials are falling. Now, out of gratitude, we must remember the men and women who came before us. We must see their faults, but not lose sight of their virtues, and aspire to the high ideals they set for us, even if they often fell short of realizing them. What will we have without these freedoms, without memory and understanding of our past? Desolate public spaces, empty bookshelves, silenced, timid citizens with nothing to strive for other than self-preservation. But with these freedoms, and inspired by our history, valuable debate and dialogue will flourish. Daring ideas will be welcome, and great ideals will live. And the work we are in, the work of building a more perfect union in a freer and fairer nation, will be possible. Let this be the path we choose. Now, it would be natural to close with a quote by one of our several generations of founding fathers. Washington, Lincoln, King. But today I feel like it's more appropriate to remember another nation's founder and a good American friend. A man who lived behind the Iron Curtain and knew well the dangers of censorship and the power of free expression. As a playwright and a musician, he suffered under censorship. As a public leader, he helped his nation gain the power of free expression. It was exactly 30 years ago today that Václav Havel, then president of Czechoslovakia, spoke in this building. You have thousands of problems of all kinds, as other countries do, he observed of America. But you have one great advantage, he reminded us. You've been approaching democracy for more than 200 years. And your journey toward that horizon has never been disrupted by a totalitarian system. Fellow Americans, our journey continues on towards that horizon, and only we have the power to disrupt it. In this nation, 2 + 2 must always equal 4. We can take a positive step forward in one respect, and here's how. Beginning today, I'll be regularly recognizing notable pieces of Indiana's history. It may be through a floor speech or a resolution or a social media posting. The purpose here will be to celebrate and better understand my state's part of America's story, and to remember the Hoosiers who through and because of freedom of action, speech, and expression, wrote that story. They will not be erased. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.